you're enjoying the food that's before you right now, and I think we're ready to start with our career and industry panel luncheon. So welcome to our second career panel that we're having at the State FFA Convention. On behalf of the Montana FFA Foundation, I want to thank you, advisors and students, for participating in this. This is a great opportunity for you to see what kind of career opportunities there are for you after you're done being an FFA member, and to learn about how you can be a leader in some of our different industries in Montana. And I know we're starting a little bit late, but I appreciate the patience of everybody in the room with flipping the room. We've been having some challenges with getting everything planned, but the MSU staff has been great to work with to make sure that this convention is a success for us with the challenges we've had with some of the logistical changes with facilities. So let's show our appreciation to MSU for being such wonderful hosts for us. At this point in time, I would like to recognize our career panel sponsor. Walt Anseth is here with the Montana Department of Agriculture, and I'm going to ask him to come up and say a few words. I know he was kind of shy, but I think he really should tell you why he's here.
The Montana Department of Ag has been the sponsor for the Teachers Luncheon for a number of years since I've been involved with the department for about 12. Now we've transitioned into the career side. I think this is a great opportunity not only for the delegates to learn what the next opportunity is for them in agriculture, but as well as the parents and the advisors to listen to this panel and see the opportunities that are coming. I want to thank you guys all for coming. Without the teachers, we wouldn't have the students, and I think we need to give a big shout out to our teachers here.
And thank you, Walt. Please accept this a token of our appreciation. Big one. Thanks so much. So at this point in time, I will invite our moderator and our panelists to come up here, and we will start our panel. And I'm really excited for this panel today. It took us a little while to get our panelist lines out when we were planning for convention, but I think we have a really diverse group here that you're gonna love to hear from. We have representatives from cooperatives, from agriculture, construction, technology, and finance. So with that, I will turn over to Kelsey Harbart, who is our moderator from the Montana Farm Bureau Federation.
Hi all, I'm Kelsey Harbart, like she just said. I'm from Montana Farm Bureau. If you don't know what Montana Farm Bureau is, we are a grassroots agricultural organization, and we are the voice for people such as you, farmers and ranchers across this great state. It's great to see so many faces in the room, and appreciation to the great sponsors, and like Walt said, the advisors. It's kind of a difficult thing right now, rural Montana, and we're trying to make it bigger and better, and I appreciate seeing everybody here. So let's start by having each of the panelists provide a brief introduction, and please keep yourself to 1 minute, and go in any order.
My name is Marilyn Bessich. I work for the Montana Cooperative Development Center, and we're located in Great Falls, Montana. It's a state agency that is recognized in the state, and it's one of 30 in the nation that helps states develop cooperatives. And some of you are familiar with cooperatives. Credit unions are cooperatives. Some people think credit unions are banks, but they're cooperatives. Some of you have experience with a local electric co-op that provides electricity to your location, or a telecommunications co-op. Those co-ops are very familiar to folks, but we have lots of variety that I hope I'll be able to share with you. We actually are supported by an appropriation, a legislative appropriation that we use to match funds and grant money. Specifically, the United States Department of Agriculture Rural Cooperative Development Grant that keeps our operation going, serving the entire state.
Perfect.
Okay.
Next.
My name is Mike McCluskey. I'm a branch president for Opportunity Bank of Montana. I didn't really choose my career. It chose me. No 18-year-old ever says, I want to be a banker when I grow up. But I've from my background in finance, it's evolved into that. Our mission for our bank is to provide a strong future for Montanans. And the biggest challenge that we face is staffing, just finding the right people, particularly in ag lending.
Good afternoon. Adam Gilbertson, the Vice President of RDO Equipment Company's West Region. I live in Billings and work for RDO Equipment Company. We are a John Deere dealer in the state of Montana, as well as a ag and construction technology provider, automating equipment and using drone technology in construction, agriculture, mining, solar field construction, and snow grooming. I've been with the company for 16 years, and much like you, I didn't pick it, it picked me. I was a political science major leaving school and thought I'd be significantly involved in politics, but I found a career I really loved, and it's been a great ride since then.
Good afternoon. John Turner. I'm from Missoula. Our family runs an organic farm. We also own a car dealership. We have a real estate LLC, and we also just recently acquired a pawn business. What I will tell you about our careers and our family businesses, I love what I do. And I encourage every one of you to figure out what it is that you love to do and do it. There's challenges in all of our businesses. You're going to hear about some of those today. But when you truly love, when you look at your ag teachers, when you look at your advisors, they don't do it for the money. They do it because they love it, and they love you guys. So truly, if you take anything away from today, find what gives you passion. Find what makes you excited about getting out of bed in the morning. If that's tending your cows, if that's working on a tractor, if that's welding aluminum, whatever that is, do it. And learn it early and continue to do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that introduction. And like he just said, we have a very unique and diverse panel here. So what you can take from it, please do, and take notes and make sure to think of questions as we go through this, because we will have question and answer at the end of it. So we will start with our first question, and this is for each of the panelists to answer. How have each of your industries changed in the last 5 years? What do you predict will happen or be most important the next 5 to 10 years?
I'll start off with that. I think the regulatory environment and the changes within that, we were discussing this earlier, that has had a significant impact and will continue to. I feel like it's a really good step in some of the ways that have tightened up on the regulatory environment, but it's also in banking, if you're not a bank that has $250 million or more in assets, it's very cumbersome and very difficult to survive in that world. So I think one of the things we'll see with it is we'll lose a lot of the smaller banks will morph into the larger banks.
Speaking from our farm side of things, we run an organic farm in Missoula, right? 5 acres on one place and 5 acres down the road. What has changed in the last 5 years? The demand for food that people know where it came from. Huge, huge change. We have people that will come to our farm year after year, day after day to get that food because they know where it came from, to buy the meat that our kids grow because they know where it came from. So as that changes, how do we change to satisfy those needs? We were talking earlier about Walmart, of all things, and how you get your groceries at Walmart, right? You phone up and then you drive up and they just put them in your car and you drive away. Convenience. Our consumers are looking for that convenience. So how do we meet that challenge in our business, and how do we incorporate social media into our business model at the farm to get those people there, to reach the customers that we need to have to pay our bills?
You know, I look back probably more at the last 10 years in agriculture and construction, and I would call it a revolution of technology that has hit both of those industries. The challenges globally are real in agriculture. We have to feed 2 billion more people, and we're really not growing more arable land. And so you've got to figure out how to do more yield production on the same or reducing acres. The input costs continue to go up for fertilizer, for equipment, for labor, but commodity prices don't seem to do the same. So the challenges with that and the ability to figure out how to be successful in that environment is really what is put in front of both the farmer or the contractor, but as well as the equipment provider who's trying to help them find a solution. In the future, it's only going to get faster, I would tell you. The technology that is out there today, learning technology, big data and analytics, and trying to understand how to give a decision to a farmer or a contractor as opposed to a bunch of data is really where we're headed.
Just 4 years ago, the agency that I work for right now, pardon me, had 2 people in it, and now there's 5. And what we're experiencing right now is an exponential growth in the interest of developing cooperatives. And that business model serves rural communities especially well. And what we're finding in the state of Montana, and I'm sure all of you are aware, that sometimes our rural communities are challenged when, for example, the local grocery store closes and there is no one that was interested in opening that grocery store. Well, the cooperative model sometimes moves in and helps with that. And so what we're seeing is this interest in the co-op model to keep rural communities together, to keep families sustainable in those rural communities, and to keep them in a position where they can do some of the things that's part of their contribution to their communities. And we really just see that growth almost we're almost unable to keep up with the requests for information about cooperatives and the unique ways that cooperatives are helping the rural communities. So hopefully, hopefully we'll be able to meet that demand and be able to add some extra people to help us with it. We actually do have 10 people across the state that do subcontracting for us on some of these levels, but even with our 10 people across the state, 5 people in our headquarters, we're still stressed to meet those demands.
Thank you. The next question has to do with the first question. What areas or jobs do you see the greatest potential for young, such as yourself, FFA students, skilled job seekers in your industry?
Besides us looking for people to help us at our agency, one of the things that we do is contract with Montana State Department of Agriculture professor George Haynes to help us with an impact report that's done on the impact that cooperatives have across the entire state of Montana. There's approximately 160 co-ops. And one of the things that we discovered from his report, that co-ops pay higher salaries than most other businesses do. The average income for an employee at a co-op is $58,000. So co-ops not only take care of the rural communities that they're in, they take care of the workers that work in those co-ops. So those are very, very good businesses to seek out employment with. Electric co-ops, again, credit unions, and all kinds of other co-ops that we've been starting in different industry sectors.
I think we face a challenge in staffing, and we're in a lot of smaller rural communities. We're also in all the larger cities in Montana. But it's difficult to get somebody to go in and take a role in a small Sheridan, Twin Bridges, some of those communities. So I see a tremendous opportunity if you want to move around anywhere in the state, and our bank is going to continue to grow. There's all kinds of positions that we have open, both in Helena, which is our headquarters, but Livingston, where I work, and it's unlimited potential. I'm looking for people that can use critical thinking skills, that are nice to people. It's just basic things like that. The rest of it comes, it's my responsibility to teach you how to be a banker or an ag lender.
I would echo that. In the world of construction and ag equipment and in the industries today, it's not about being a master of what's happening now, but it's about having the ability to troubleshoot and critical think and problem solve the future problems that we're going to face. And one of the most important things, and if there are any English or speech teachers in the room, spend time learning how to communicate, both in writing and verbally, because it is a critical skill that is is really in decline in the country. And there is nothing more important in a professional career than to be able to carry yourself professionally and talk and express your ideas and opinions in a way that can both get your point across and help people understand where you're coming from. And then along the way, make sure you learn some math.
I would echo a lot of what my other panelists have said. One thing that I will tell all of you out there that have a blue coat on, the one advantage you have over the rest of the workforce that I've tried to hire in the businesses that we have, you're responsible. You're here because you want to be here. You've studied for contests, you practice for contests. A lot of the workforce that's out there doesn't show up for work because they don't feel like it, because it's not fun enough for them. So if you choose to go into, for instance, an RDO, if you choose to become a mechanic at RDO, I would strive, I'd beg you to not just be a parts changer. What you want to do is figure out why that tractor broke. Why doesn't it work? Sure, I can change this part because that's what the manual said, but go to the guy that has gray hair that works in the shop and ask him, why do you think this didn't, how did you fix that old 56 tractor compared to this one with all the electronics on it? The critical thinking aspect that these guys were talking about. Utilize yourselves. The talents that you have now will continue to grow, but don't just become one of the flow. You're not. When you walk through the schools, your high school right now, you're not one of the rest of them. You have a blue jacket on. That's a responsibility that you should carry with you. We expect you to carry that with you, and we expect to hire you in a couple of years, truly.
If I was going to add to that, we struggle. We'll get people that have a financial background and have worked in financial services, and they'll come in and not want to work the way that we have it set up or how we want to go about it. We have a really simple thing. We buy and sell money. It's very simple. The difficult part or the challenge is how to do that in a different way so that we can build a repeatable business and help people out. So we've gone to our last 2 hires had no financial services background at all. They've turned out fantastic. We hired them because they can show empathy to people, they can critically think, they know what we're trying to do, and they work in the culture that we've set up.
Okay, thank you. This question is directed to Adam, and once again, he works for RDO Equipment Company. Farmers are continually integrated more precision agriculture technologies into their planning and production. Because of technology in agriculture, implement dealers need qualified and capable service technicians, now more than ever. To help keep farmers in the field, how does RDO recruit technicians who can keep up with the latest industry technology? That was a long one, sorry.
It was, yeah. Fortunately, I've got it written down here. There are a number of ways. One is being a part of an event like this and participating in our communities. It's a really important thing, we think, from our organization to be a part of the local communities that we're in. More importantly, it's important to know there are professional and trade career opportunities available, and in most industries, it is an area where if you have completed successfully your 2-year or 4-year degree, you are at about a 99.9% placement opportunity. You've got to not want to find an opportunity coming out of a diesel technology program today. John Deere in the United States in the next 2 years needs to find 1,000 new technicians to keep up with where we are. The schools that produce that degree certificate is about a third of that ability if they were all full. They're not. And they're anywhere from 25 to 40% full in those schools. So you can kind of see the challenge we've got. As a company, we provide a program called Access Your Future. It's a tuition reimbursement program that can pay up to $16,000 in a tuition reimbursement. It also gives you the opportunity to come and work in a coached and mentored environment that is a paid internship while you're in school. And so that's part of what the industry is doing today. And I know a number of dealers across Montana and the United States are looking at that career process. And it's more than just technicians. as a John Deere dealer, we employ agronomists, we employ 3D modelers, we employ social media experts, and we are your traditional John Deere dealer, if you will. But the demand for those skills and expertise are important in the industry.
That was very good information for any of those diesel tech interested students out there if you want to talk to him after the panel. That 99.9 you said % higher rate, that is huge. So anybody interested? Question number 4, all panelists can answer this, so once again in random order. FFA focuses on 2 different areas of competitive events. Leadership development events are designed to improve students' communication through public speaking, while career development events focus on building students' technical skills and ability to problem solve. I would like the panelists to share what type of skills you look for in new employees. What skills seem to be rare among young people entering the workforce? And please comment how you see soft leadership skills and concrete technical skills influencing the dynamics of your workforce.
Over the course of my years, I've taught at college. So I was a college professor for about 26 years. And during that time, I had the good fortune of being a judge at a number of the competitions that were put on by FFA. And during that time, what I saw was a unique sort of tenacity and professionalism in these students. And I would say you are the example of what we're looking for in workers. We want you to have those skill sets, soft skill sets. Show up for the job, be willing to work in a team, be curious about the work that you're doing. Those kind of skills are very, very important. And sometimes they're hard to demonstrate in a competition. Sometimes the competitions are more skill-based, so we can see what skill you have. But certainly think about how you would demonstrate those soft skills to an employer. And the technical skills, often, if you have a foundation, as you had mentioned, if you have a foundation in banking, what you need to be willing to do is modify the way that you approach your knowledge base to the environment that you happen to be in. Those kinds of skills are critically important. The technical skill is important. Your ability to modify and adjust to the environment is even more important.
I would echo a lot of that. I like to mix metaphors, and I'll talk with our group over there, and I said, what we do isn't rocket surgery. It's really a simple thing. It's, again, how we do that. There's not a lot of technicality to processing a transaction. What it comes down to is the skills that you have and the ability to relate to people. How are we going to help you with this? How does this loan work for you? What are your needs? We might have another way to go about things. We were talking earlier about how we process or how we decide to do a loan in today's environment. I think our answer is it depends, and it really depends on you being able to think that through and put that together in a way that is good for the bank, but also good for the client.
People have a tendency to support a world they help create. And I think as young leaders, it's important to remember that. Leadership's not about dictation, it's not about demand, it's about building others, making them better, helping them grow. And the best way to do that is to make sure that the team you're working with understands why they're doing what they're doing and how important it is to a customer, a neighbor, the business that you're in. And I'd say that is probably, especially as we're talking to a group of future leaders in the country, be a leader that builds. Because that skill will pay dividends for you, and if your team is successful, you're successful. And it's a lot more fun, so.
I'd love to continue with that, and first of all, I would assume that all of your advisors and your parents have taught you how to shake hands firmly and look somebody in the eye when you meet them. If they haven't taught you that, they're in trouble. Very, very important, that first impression. That's what's going to get you past that interview. That's what's going to get you that job, that first impression. Articulating what you want to say. Silence is okay. It makes the whoever you're talking to, stop for a second and listen. That gives you time to put those thoughts together. I think I'm just talking about one of the public speaking CDs, right? Take advantage of those. And again, I'll coattail on working with that team. When you get that job, and I'm sure you've hired finance background folks, you've had them, we're gonna start you as a teller. They last for 3 or 4 days, come in your office and say, okay, Mike, I'm done doing this teller business. I want that big job. I want the desk. I deserve the desk. I have a college degree. I want the 6-figure income right now. What's the problem? That is the problem. What you need to do, if you have to scrub the toilet to show your team member you know how to scrub a toilet because your mother taught you how to do it, by God, scrub that toilet better than anybody else did. Because your team members will follow you everywhere. When you show that you're willing to do the hard, crappy, rotten, pig-scooping job, your friends, your coworkers will be right there behind you. So please take those simple, simple words of advice. Don't buck your advisors anymore when you get back home. When they ask you to slop the hogs, slop the hogs. When clean out the pen before they ask you to. Because your hog doesn't like sleeping in the slop, right? Those are the kind of critical things that we want you to, it's not we're nagging on you as parents and advisors. We're trying to make you better employees, better people in the future.
I always have a saying when I have 2 things that I do when we hire somebody. I say, remember the excitement that you had when you found out you had the job, and bring that every day. The other thing that I want to point out is I want to hire the next CEO of the bank. Then when I'm aging and I can't do it anymore, you're going to be real nice to me.
Great advice, guys. I will not ask you a lending ratio question, as we joked about before, but this is towards Mike. All of you guys shared your organizational mission with us to kick off the panel. Actually, you kind of skipped that part now that I read this question. Maybe we'll do that at the end. The mission of FFA is to develop students' potential for premier leadership, personal growth, and career success through ag education. This is going to look different for different students. There are a lot of college recruiters joining us in the trade show, and many students are pushed to take a path by their mentors and teachers. Mike, you received your accounting and economic degrees from Central Washington University and have built up years of experience in the finance industry. Could you make a distinction between the education and the training you have received and the experience you have gained, speaking specifically to how education and experience are relevant to the work you do in your sector in general?
It's interesting because I look back on that, and I think my education helped lay the foundation for what I do now, but it's taking that one step further. The real, I guess, the real point, or the real thing that helped me is just being out there and figuring out how I'm going to use those skills that I got and how that relates to what I do. It's not, it's kind of another joke that we have is how are we going to do this? How do we make this loan work? And it comes back to it depends. And that's that skill, using those skills. But the bigger part is listening to people, getting that information in, and seeing how we make that work for the borrower and the bank both. It has to be a win on both sides. So while I think that's important and has worked for me very well, it might not be the path for everybody. It might be doing something, going a different route, going right into a construction-related job, or doing something, working at a dealership, and then taking those skills that you've garnered from your education and employing those in that role.
Do any of you other panelists have information to add to that?
Sure, I would suggest, I graduated with a degree in business finance, so if I get bored with what I'm doing, maybe I'll ask for a job.
Just don't ask for 6 figures right out of the gate.
I want 7. So, using that background that I have, I work with several people that have not had a college education. And what's really fascinating to me is their inability to follow a process, right? There's a sales process, there's a mechanical process, there's all these processes that we do in all the aspects of our jobs. You guys probably get really tired of school. and you get really tired of the homework, particularly math, right? Because if you screw up at the first part of something, then halfway through the page, it's ruined because you screwed up right at the beginning. But having that practice, that 4-year degree, that 6-year degree, that gives you that experience to apply. You don't even realize you're applying it, and I didn't know that I was applying it. But it's because of that background that I'm able to do a little bit better critical thinking than those people that didn't have that college, that extra education, right? So whatever it is, whether you stop at a 2-year program or you come right out of your farm, remember those math problems. Do really good in the school that you're in, no matter what level you get to.
One thing I might add to what my panelists have said here is that a foundation in business is an important element for you, regardless of what industry sector you go into, whether it's farming, and you learn that in much of their curriculum that you have with FFA, is that this is a business, and you need to understand the business side of it. And my education, my bachelor's degree is in business administration, and I have a master's degree in management. I have a doctorate degree in education that helped me be a better teacher. And along all of the lines of the businesses that I worked in, my fundamental business background and learning served me well in every place I was at. And what I discovered was that where I'm at right now in the cooperative model, that particular model was not taught very strongly when I was in college and under the business administration program. They taught primarily a for-profit model. And the cooperative model is for-profit in many cases, but it's for the sustainability of the business. And really, it was when I was teaching some of those classes that I discovered this different model, the cooperative model. And I was fortunate enough to find a position in going after this model and putting it into place and watching the effectiveness of this model. So I guess my takeaway on this would be study business. It will always serve you well, regardless of what other technical skills or industry you go into.
I would maybe like to add, and it's a bit off topic, but don't be afraid to fail. Character is built and often revealed in your hardest struggle. And when you look back on your life and realize that where I really grew the most was when it was the hardest. And to do that, you've got to be willing to try new things. You've got to be willing to think outside of the box. Sometimes they're going to be great successes. Sometimes it's going to be a tailspin. But that's where you learn. And don't be afraid to do that. Too often in business, too often in life, people are not willing to take that chance. And just go for it. You'll learn a lot along the way, and you'll find that you'll grow as a person doing it.
I hope y'all are taking notes because this is good stuff. This next question is directed towards John. Montana has been ranked in the top 4 states for entrepreneurship growth and small business development over the past 3 years. John, could you just describe your experience starting with your business for our young, aspiring entrepreneurs in the room? I'd also ask that you comment on how you see small business growth playing a role in rural communities in our state.
I promise to try and be brief. This could last hours. I won't worry.
Gwen won't let you go
Good.
hours.
Do one of these for me. Please raise your hand if you have thought at all about being an entrepreneur, running your own business, doing something for yourself. Please raise your hand. That is awesome. So let me tell you, when you start, it is super scary. I didn't know how I was going to pay the heat bill. I didn't know if I'd have enough money to take my girlfriend at that time, which was now my wife, if I'd have enough money to take her to the movies. And I had pagers back then. We didn't have cell phones. So my pager would go off on the way to the movies because I was trying to sell the car that we were driving. And sure enough, sometimes I'd pull over to payphone and I'd meet the people right there. We'd miss the first show and have to go to the second show because I sold the car at a payphone in a parking lot, right? Those are some of the cleaning the toilet things I had mentioned earlier. I did there was no time clock. I didn't get paid overtime. I only got paid if I sold something. And then if I sold something, I had to learn not to spend all the money that I just got from that sale because I had to reinvest that in something else to sell to pay the heat bill for next month or pay the rent. I lived in a basement apartment for $200 a month. I was okay with that because that was cheaper than anybody else was. I had a second job loading packages at UPS at night so that I could pay all my bills, and I had health insurance. And then I'd spend all day learning about the car business and meeting people and shaking hands with a firm handshake and establishing relationships. That's about that entrepreneurship vision, right? It is scary, but it is super, super rewarding. One of the things I will, and this is very challenging, you heard me earlier joke about wanting a 7-figure income. At this age in my life, I have something to offer. So I could certainly go into another business and I could say, this is what I'm worth because look what I have done, look what I have accomplished. When you go in at 18 years old or 20 years old and you do that, we're gonna look at you a lot differently. We're gonna say, well, why would we wanna give you, what have you done? What have you proven? What have you proven to yourself? What have you proven to the rest of the community? You really haven't. So please don't show the confidence, but don't show that arrogance, right? I have a college degree, I deserve this much money. No, you have a college degree, you deserve a job to prove that you can earn and you can become that CEO because you're gonna start at the toilets and you're gonna work all the way through. You're gonna be the best teller and you're gonna establish relationships with those eventual borrowers. They're gonna wanna borrow from you because they've known you for 2 years. You're putting your time in, right? If you're an entrepreneur and you have a job before, that's not a failure. That's an advantage. When you're at college, you're making friends from all over the state. If you're in sales, you want to know those people all over the state because you want to sell to them in the future because they know you. You've spent that time getting to know them. Utilize that relationship in a positive way. And remember, everything that you do has that positive consequence. So those of you that raised your hands, congratulations. I encourage you, anything I can do to help you in the future. If you ever want to ask me anything, certainly call. Remind me where you heard me talk, and then be specific about what it is you'd like to answer. I'd be happy to answer any question you have, and particularly about my failures, because that's really where I learned how to be better.
Thank you. Marilyn, do you want to add something to this since you're rural development?
Well, I think I want to kind of talk about the entrepreneurship side. I think entrepreneurs are sort of a special breed. They have a particular tolerance for ambiguity. They have an ability to say, I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to get that done, but I'm going to do it, and I'll take one step at a time, and they get there. And a lot of times those individuals are the ones that are the big problem solvers in the group. So I've always applauded entrepreneurs and their courage and their tenacity and their tolerance for ambiguity. But I also think that entrepreneurs don't happen in just one individual. I mean, although we kind of attributed that to single individuals. So what I'm seeing now where I'm at in the Cooperative Development Center is that we have groups of entrepreneurs who get together and they form these cooperatives. So it doesn't have to be a solo journey. It can be a journey that you take with other people in your community or in your circle of friends. So find the entrepreneurs around you and partner with them to solve the problems that exist in your area.
Thank you. This question is also for you. Montana is primarily a rural state, and many of our members are from these rural communities. How do you foresee rural communities changing in the next 5 to 10 years? What are your benefits to students to returning home to their rural communities, and how can cooperatives be utilized for economic development in rural Montana?
Thank you for the question. I think I did mention to you that rural communities sometimes struggle with declining population, loss of some of the farms that are in some of the rural communities. And we've seen that trend, and we're working very hard to start reversing that and make sure that rural communities stay strong. But I do think that one thing that's happening that kind of related to a previous question too, that we're working with that, and so if in a particular community there is a farm that is going to be sold, family doesn't have any heirs to pass it on to, or maybe the children don't want it, and that's going to be sold to a much bigger farm or a conglomerate. The community sometimes pulls together, we're finding in these cooperatives that are investment cooperatives, buys the farm property, the community buys the farm property at very favorable lease or rental rates, rents it out to that farmer who has an interest in doing it, a young farmer, maybe an inexperienced farmer who needs to have some time on his property and on that farm to experience what that farm is like, to have the mentors of the owners of that property around them, also farmers, to help him with that. And once that farmer gets his feet underneath him, then he's able to buy that farm. And the investment cooperative that is the investment that purchased the property in the first place turns around and buys the next piece of farmland to keep small farmers on the property, to keep people interested in it. And we're having a lot of success with this idea of an investment cooperative where people are locally pooling their money to solve those kind of problems in the communities. That's where I see rural communities going in the future, is solving their own problems locally, using many of their own resources, and then capitalizing on those resources to garner other resources. So we're finding it in something we call a barnyard cooperative that we're working on. We have worker cooperatives that we're working with. We have housing cooperatives that we're working on. So across a lot of different industry sectors. So I see rural communities, and we do all of this in rural areas. Rural communities are going to start to flourish more because the cooperative model tends to lend itself well in those communities. Once the community starts to grow, then the private entrepreneurs are more attracted to the arena, and that's how that growth starts to happen. And that's the mission of our center, is to help grow and sustain rural communities.
Gwen, do I have time for another question that I can make up? Okay, so we missed, in their introduction, they were supposed to say their mission, and we did not do that. And she just said hers. But what I'm going to do, I mean, us at Montana Farm Bureau, we're the voice of agriculture. We care for country. We're leaders. We're advocates. That is what we live up to every day in what we do. What is your mission in your business, whether it's your ranch or farm? It could be just a personal mission or your actual business mission. How do you live up to that in your day-to-day work ethic? Or how do you obtain that?
I think ours is pretty simple. It's to provide a strong financial future for Montanans. And I think that's just a part of our culture, and it's very easy to live and go with that. We work with small communities. We work with small business. So I think we just live that every day as part of what we do. There's not a lot of RDOs out there that we can bank. So we have to live in that area of the small business.
Our CEO rewrote our mission and vision at the end of the downturn right after 2008. And she decided, along with the leadership in our company, that we needed to figure out a way to communicate what long-term sustainable success looked like when industry opportunity dropped by 90% in a corporation. That's going to mean the bottom line is not black. Or very, very hard to get black. So what does success look like? And how do we determine what viability for a company that is going to survive and last is? And they came up with a stakeholder philosophy, not a shareholder philosophy, but a stakeholder, and that we have 5 in our organization. The first is the team, the employees in the company. The second is our customers. The third is our manufacturer partners. The fourth is the communities that we do business in, and the fifth is our owners. And if we're not making decisions that balance the needs, demands, and wants of all 5 of those stakeholders, we're not going to be successful over the long term. Then she wrapped that in our core values and gave a roadmap, if you will, for the leadership in our company to say, here are the 5 core values that we have, here's what we live by, and we'd encourage you as you're making decisions every day in Missoula or Billings or Dallas, Texas, to use these core values to help guide your decisions. But the decisions have to be made locally. They are partner with our employees, build customers for life, create opportunities, we do what we say, and play to win. And so that is kind of the structure that RDO operates under. For me, I feel a lot like a coach. There are rules, there are penalties, and there's an out of bounds, but really no one tells you how to get to the end zone. It's your job to figure that out, and so that's how our company operates.
I would speak to our farm, to our family farm. We started it in 2006, and as you can tell, as a entrepreneur, I was very concerned about how this thing was going to make money. You know, how is it that this can pay for itself, or pay the taxes, or at least pay the house payment? How can we make this work? And so every trade that I would make with a neighbor, I would record that so I could see that we profited this much on carrots this year. We profited this much on onions. We sold this much in our beef. We also do farm tours for the school kids, and we did that as a way to help encourage some more business, some more customers, right? If the parents came on these tours, perhaps we could gain them as customers. Well, one day, the third grade class that was there was right by our potato patch. And you guys probably don't appreciate this near as much because you're used to it, but in Missoula, these kids saw potatoes, and I said they could pick a potato themselves. Well, it was like they found gold. They reached it, and then they were taking 2, they were taking 3, stuffing their pockets with dirty potatoes. Of course, it was great. So then I thought the next logical question to ask these third graders was, hey, does anybody know where French fries come from? What do you suppose the answer was? McDonald's. Then one of the mothers, actually what he's looking for is Wendy's. Honest to God. Those kids left. Aaron and I went inside, and I looked at her and said, you know what? I don't care how much this place loses. It makes no difference to me. We need to educate our kids. Schedule as many tours as you can. I'll take off all the time that I have to take off. I don't care if we have 2,000 people that show up this year. I'm going to be here. We're going to teach kids that French fries don't come from McDonald's. That's our philosophy. It starts with kids younger than you. So what that means to you is that you have to teach those kids that are younger than you. You have to reach out to those kids that don't have blue jackets on, and you have to teach them something. You have to teach them where their food comes from, right? That's our philosophy at our farm, and unfortunately, it has become very, very successful because people really care about where their food comes from. They don't want any chemicals on their food. Now they drive. We don't have to deliver anything. We don't have to do farmers markets anymore. We don't have to sell to the grocery stores. They come to our place because they know that that food is good. All because we wanted to teach young people where their French fries came from.
Thank you. I'm making up questions as we go because we're out of questions. So one thing that I'm thinking of is business challenges. For us, it's membership and getting active leaders that in our counties are going forward and having new ideas. And what do you have as business challenges, whether it's within yourself or within your company? Anybody?
You know, I'll start. I told you I had a degree in business finance. One of the biggest challenges that I faced as an entrepreneur, something that I hope they have changed in the business curriculum. So if there's any college professors here, I hope you focus a lot more on tax consequence. I make decisions. I buy and don't buy real estate because of a tax consequence. Because Uncle Sam becomes a third partner and I can't quite afford to make that much money because then that takes me out of the health department, the free health service that we get. I mean, there's so many factors that you don't have any idea. I didn't have any idea going into into business for myself that taxes are a huge, the co-op, you don't have to pay taxes because it's right? So there's a huge advantage. So there's learning as much as you can about that is terribly, terribly important.
Thank you, John, for kind of mentioning the tax issue. There's really two major considerations to consider a cooperative form of business ownership, and one of them is the taxes. So don't want to turn this into a tax lesson, but there are clear advantages to that. Even the for-profit cooperatives have huge tax advantages. And the other one is that it can be organized with the sale of shares of stock, but we are exempt from the Securities and Exchange Commission regulations that can be very onerous for businesses to sell shares of stock. Cooperatives are exempt from that. So there's two really major kinds of considerations that help cooperatives become successful easily.
I don't want to talk about taxes. So, I don't know about you guys, but I would tell you the biggest challenge personally that I have in the job I'm in today is being able to see around the corner what's coming next in our industry, in business, in the economy, and trying to make sure the business is prepared for it, both in inventory levels and team member need and training, but trying to anticipate. I mean, if you really look back at the major technological revolutions over the last 10 years, who thought the iPhone was going to do what it did? Or the iPad was not supposed to be a good thing. I mean, it was never going to work when it was launched. But understanding now what the next big thing is, and it's more than just getting feedback or hearing from someone what their needs are. Steve Jobs' comment was, the role of Apple is to take a product that someone has no idea or can't envision, but once they see, can't live without. Try figure that one out. But those are the things that are challenging out in the world today of what are the next things and how can we prepare the business to go and be prepared for them.
A quick follow-up. One thing we have not talked about, you touched on it just a little bit, Marilyn, land and our population growth. You know, unfortunately, and we will apologize to you younger generation because we're not leaving the world a better place than we found it. We're leaving you with less real estate to grow more food for the people that need it. Not just rural communities are struggling. Bozeman, Belgrade, Missoula. If we want to expand our farm, it costs us $125,000 to $150,000 an acre. So for those of you in rural communities that are paying $500, $800, $2,000, $5,000 an acre, which isn't sustainable, try to figure out how to make a $150,000 acre pay for itself without growing marijuana. It's challenging. That is one of the biggest questions, and I don't think we could answer that question up here, but the rural co-op with a co-op on how to purchase, that's exciting. I mean, that is terribly exciting. There's a lot of money out there. If we can tap that money to save this land, because truly, once a house goes on it, you know how expensive it is to take that house off and grow potatoes? It's probably not going to happen. Maybe in Detroit, but not in Montana. Big questions that you guys are going to be right in your lap. Sorry that we did that to you.
I guess I'm the odd person. I really like to talk about taxes. And I've always said that one of my life goals, a bucket list goal for me, is to have $1 million tax liability, because then I would probably have had a pretty good year. I think some of that, with regards to the land, and that's something that we see a lot, is have fewer and fewer opportunities to finance land because it's too expensive to make it work. If you're if you're paying more than $900, $950 for per acre for grain, it's not going to pencil out. You have to have a whole bunch of other land. We'll do as an infill, but it's getting more difficult to get into that. I just want to go back to my earlier point about the biggest challenge that I see is finding my replacement and finding a replacement for a lot of the other lenders we have, where there's a lot of gray hair out there in our lending groups. And finding someone that can do that is going to be a huge challenge. When there's a bunch of us in that probably last 10 years of our career, and there's not a lot of bench strength coming up. So if you have any interest in that at all, come see us. We'll help show you how to do that.
I just have one more thing that I kind of wanted to mention about a struggle that we have. It's certainly not of the magnitude of land, but it's one that's important, and it touches all of you, and that's Robert's Rule of Order. Cooperatives are governed by a board of directors, and that board of directors is governed by a process called Robert's Rule of Order. Everyone here knows that, right? Everyone works with Robert's Rule of Order. How many like Robert's Rules of Order? Yeah, you know, it's a good thing, isn't it? It's thick, it's a lot. There's a lot of details to it. It's thick and rich. But one of the things that we discover is that people don't always know about Robert's Rules of Order if they get on a board of directors in a co-op. So our center does a board of directors training for them, and we try to incorporate as much as we can about the Robert's Rule of Order and protocol for handling meetings, et cetera. And that's an important thing in order for the governance of the cooperative to be handled properly. So when you study your Robert's Rule of Order, keep that book with you, memorize as much of it as you can, and organize meetings on that level, because they're very productive, and when meetings are not productive, you don't get nearly as much done. So just a small tidbit there.
Gwen, do you want me to keep going or ask for questions? Okay, so I'm going to be done asking questions to the panelists, and at this point we will open it up to you guys. Like I said, they've given a ton of good information. I don't think, in my notes it says you have microphones, but I don't think you do, so just...
Right up front.
Oh, right there, yeah, found it. So if you do have questions for these guys, I hope you do, come and ask it.
Or just stand up at your seat if you're too intimidated to go to that microphone. Or we'll bring you one of these. I think we could bring you one of these. I'll bring you one of these. We got to ask some questions. So think of it. I'm the kind of guy that's just going to put the microphone in your hand and you get to ask the question. So if you're trying to hide from me, you can ask a question. What's your name?
Loudon Miller,
Where are you from, Loudon?
Denton, Montana.
What's your question for this panel? Would you like to work for RDO?
Probably.
Right on. Question? All right.
I think we had one right here, this gentleman.
All right.
Thank you. Jay Myers, Stevensville. Interested also in the Barnyard Cooperative, but somewhat hands-off on cooperatives myself. But the idea of estate planning, and there's a lot of transitioning that needs to happen in agriculture, and to transition property management and the opportunity to make a good life and living. And we need more options for the older generation that needs to step out of it. So I bring this up simply because FFA is an ideal situation where the advisors and the members themselves need to be conscious of those opportunities, and I think there's some landowners like myself and I don't know why I do this because I'm passionate, but I'm happy, but to try to transition this lifestyle and opportunity off to you. So my challenge is to try to find a way to navigate through the realtors and the lawyers that allow you to manage someone else's place like it's your own. I think there's a real future for that. So,
I think you're right. I think you're right. Right now we're sort of in an experimental stage with what we're calling the rural investment cooperatives. This is relatively new to the state. As a matter of fact, the very first rural investment cooperative was in Roundup. It purchased the Central School. Do we have some folks from Roundup here that would know what I'm talking about with the Central School? And that investment co-op is trying to save that school building. It's very much that same model where we're trying to save farmland. We invest in the farmland. We save a piece of property in a particular community. We invest in patents and different kinds of investments that we can take a look at and see how we can make that rural community better as a result of that collective investment. But but there's got to be more ways that the farmland can in fact move from farmers who are willing to get out of that industry, move on to a retirement, and have that land still productive in the state of Montana with Montana farmers. And I think that there's a lot of promise to the problem solving that goes on in that. But our first efforts at that in the Rural Investment Cooperative have been promising, and we're excited about possible future solutions that could be very complementary too.
I think it's bubbled its way to the top for estate planning, and so I encourage you to seek out places in your community, because I know there's people that want to retire on their land, but they want to get out of the maintenance part of it, and they're probably not looking to make money themselves. They don't want to sell their property. I think you need to build a relationship, and the dirty fingernails and the cleaning the toilets is a good way to start.
I will tell you, in Missoula, there's a thing called the Community Food and Agriculture Coalition, and they have a division that's called LandLink Montana, and that's exactly the mission that they are trying to accomplish. They're trying to put existing farmers with young farmers to do exactly what you're talking about. So there are those organizations, but how do we find them? Great question. How do we do that? How do we compile that information so we can get it?
How do we partner with one another? Yeah.
Yes, precisely.
Yeah.
So my question to the panel is, in the CDEs, there's generally a team component to those. And so if you could each speak to, in your businesses, how much the team aspect plays a role versus the individual's skill plays a role in when you're hiring somebody.
Yeah, I'll start on that one. I would tell you that they are a symbiotic relationship. You cannot discount the importance of the individual skill, expertise, passion, attention to detail that goes with being good at your chosen trade. But you can't be successful in the long run unless you can work effectively with a team, because often the job is bigger than one person. Taking care of the customer, taking care of a major project. One person can't do it alone. But if each team member is not holding up their competent end of the bargain, if you will, you'll fail too. So it's a really important balance in business to be able to be good at what you do, be proud of that, but also be confident enough in your skills not to feel like your skills need to overshadow someone else's. Bring them with you as opposed to, step on top of, and not losing sight that both are important.
I would kind of mirror that in what we do. So I'm not in the office all the time because I'm out on a farm or a ranch counting cows or looking at grain or doing some site inspections. So inevitably, the tellers in our branch are going to see my customers more than I do. So it's really important. If they're not doing their job, I can't do my job. So there's the individual component, definitely, but it has to all come together. And so we have, our frontline people are the most important because they see the customer more than anybody else.
Right now where I'm working, each one of us has a different skill set. So it's relatively easy for us to work together because there's minimal crossover in our skill sets. We each have our own role inside the organization, and so we work together to make a whole, solve a problem. But I've also worked in arenas where I was one of many people who had the same skill set. And what I think I discovered in working in that environment, that teams are best and most productive when the team makes an effort to tap in to the magic one thing that each person brings to the team. Instead of competing that you have the same skill set, what is it that I do that you don't do that we can pull together and create a synergy in that team? If your team kind of suffers from a competitiveness, I think that sometimes is dangerous for the team. If it has a synergy where they're working together in a cohesive unit, that to me is the most productive team experience that I've had. So that, it's tricky.
I'd just like to add that high-performing teams fill the gaps for each other, and low-performing teams tend to point at the gap. And you'll know which one you're in when you see that happening.
When you guys work on a team, I would suggest that there's oftentimes that there's maybe one team member or two team members that maybe be better than the other ones of you, and they might take a brunt of the work. So the challenge I see in one of our companies is we have that exact situation. We have a couple really strong team members, and the lesser team members don't do as much. So those other employees that aren't doing as much, the ones that are doing more get mad at the ones that aren't doing as much because they feel like they're doing more work. But the ones that are doing more work are doing more work because they know how to do it, and they do it. So the challenge for those of you that are really good at what you do, the challenge is to step back and help your team be as good as you are. That's the challenge. We see that in all of our companies, right? When one of our employees says something that gets back to me that's negative, that's a reflection on me. So what was it that I did that I didn't teach that team member, that employee, the proper way to do something? Because now that's a bad impression on our farm, on our car dealership. So if you're that good, which you are, how do you teach the lesser in your team? How do you get them on board to help you side by side clean that toilet and do it with a smile? That's the trick. And really, when you're that good, you need to know how to do that. And your advisors, where are you advisors? That's your job to pick that out and get them to do that, which is the hardest thing to do as an employer. Right, guys? I mean, gals, that's very difficult to do. Very difficult.
I had a mentor early in my career that in a situation, one of the other parts of the team wasn't pulling their weight, and I was complaining about it, and he said, well, what are you doing about it? How are you helping out? And it was eye-opening. It's not just me doing my thing. It was the whole part together. So we have that. We do that a lot within our branches when we have a situation. Hey, what are you doing about it? I got the part that you think things are wrong. What are you doing to make it right?
So to follow up, I did not grow up in FFA. I grew up the son of a used car dealer, right? So what Ms. Stanley just asked, the CDE that talks about team building, what you guys are learning, what your advisors feel like maybe shoving down your throat, applies in a multi-million-dollar business, a multi-million-dollar bank. This is real life. You might not think that these CDEs are real life. They're real life. Thank you for the question. Great question.
There's one right here.
So two things. One, I went to one of your, workshops. I used to live in Missoula. And two, how did you guys decide what career you wanted to be in?
I'll start with that. I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player, and I didn't have the skills to do it. So I knew I had to do something else. It's really tough at 12 when you figure out that you can't do your dream job. So I just have always been interested in math. My dad was an engineer for Boeing for 38 years, and I picked up that math skill. He would drill us about math. We'd be on a long trip, and he would give you a math problem to figure out on the trip. So it just came naturally for me, and I ended up, I went to Central Washington University on a track scholarship and knew I had to do something, so I happened upon an accounting class, and it just clicked. I don't know. I know that we were talking earlier you probably don't remember the show LA Law. There's never been an LA accounting or LA banker, so I want to have a show like that. But I fell into it. It worked for me and the skill sets that I have, and I turned it into a career.
My father wanted me to be a petroleum engineer, and I went to Montana Tech for 2 years in petroleum engineering. And I was in college, and I wasn't having that much fun. So I transferred to Missoula, and I took some business classes. I just decided I was going to branch out a little bit. And I took a marketing class from, his name was Dr. Canole. He was very flamboyant. He wore leisure suits. Remember, I'm kind of that age. He wore leisure suits, and one of my favorites was the one that looked just like an Italian tablecloth, the red and white checkered leisure suit. And he hooked me on business and marketing in particular. And I did get an opportunity to work for 6 years in an advertising agency, and that was fabulous. So that's how I fell into business. And then when I didn't do the petroleum engineering thing, my father thought, you better be a teacher. So he encouraged the education side. So I got my degrees in education as well. So it was kind of an influence of my parents and then a little bit of rebellion on my part.
I grew up in a small northern Minnesota town, and like many of you, had a decision to make when I was in high school of what I was going to do. And I decided to go to a small school in Moorhead called Concordia. And through getting involved in organizations much like the FFA, although I wasn't a part of the FFA process, I met the RDO in RDO, and he became a mentor for me. And I spent then 9 years in the Army after that, but came back to the company. And what I'd encourage you, I mean, those stories are out there all over. Get involved in something you're passionate about, whether it's work or a charitable organization, volunteering, serving the country, and meet as many people as you can and find out about them. Many of you have mentors in your lives already. And I'd really encourage you to seek as many of them out as you can, because it is a tremendous way to open a door in networking, to find an opportunity you're passionate about. Because at the end of the day, you're going to spend more time with your work family than you are with your family. If you do the math, that's how it works. So make sure you find something you like, something you're passionate about, and seek out an opportunity with someone that you respect, with someone that you see doing something that interests you, and go learn about what they're doing, because it can change your life.
And take a chance.
And take a chance. Yep.
I told one of my grandmothers that I was going to be a pastor, because that's what she wanted to hear. I told one of my other grandparents, my other side of grandparents, that I would get a job for the government because I was guaranteed a pension and I would never have to worry about it, and I'd have that constant income, because that's what he wanted to hear. I spent 3 years of my high school walking through the halls like this because I was too afraid to look at somebody in the eye. I could tell every one of my classmates' name in class because I would listen to roll call, but I only looked at the back of their heads because I was afraid to look them in the eye. For whatever reason, over my junior year summer, something changed the clothes I wore, whatever it was, I came back with a different attitude. I thought, you know what? I can look people in the eye, because then they look down, they're afraid. Well, this is interesting. And then off to college I go. I joined a fraternity. Wow, this opened me up to a lot of interesting things. I have to learn how to be confident. I took some public speaking classes. I learned that there's this butterfly feeling in my stomach that I had today when I was sitting up at this panel. And I looked at everybody else's hands, and they're doing the same thing. That's exciting. I learned something about myself. That scares me, but one of those public speaking teachers told me, take that energy, use silence, and make yourself stronger. How do you do that? How do you keep people engaged? You guys are engaged. I'm using silence. Wish my youngest son was here to understand that in public speaking. How did I end up being a car dealer? My dad was. So it naturally fell into place. He showed me some of the things, but he's do whatever you want. Kid, it's entirely up to you. If you're not happy, don't do it. But whatever you do, know you have to take care of me when I die, before I die. So I fell into it. I love it. I've grown it. I married the most incredible woman in my life. And I'll tell you what, we can talk about that. So when you find your mate, make sure that you're both going in the same direction. We're successful because our marriage is successful. Our kids see that our marriage is successful. Our businesses are successful because I love her more than I love anything else. And that keeps us going. Sorry. Thank you. More questions. Here we go. Look at that. The kids are starting to get brave. A public speaker, I see. I hope to see you winning something next year.
Me too. Okay, well, so I'm middle school representative of our chapter, which doesn't make sense because I'm a freshman. But I was wondering how you guys get people encouraged to just be more active in whatever you're doing. And also make sure that they understand what your companies and your missions are really about, because I've met people and they have no idea what FFA even means. And I have to try to explain to them in like a 2-minute period of time, like the incredibleness of this organization. So I was wondering if you guys have ever faced any of those kinds of situations.
Every day. The Cooperative Development Center is often a complete mystery to people, so we spend a lot of time talking about who we are and what we do. We field calls from people who say, well, I heard that you do some cooperative sort of thing, and would you come to our meeting? Next week I go to White Sulphur Springs. I'll be in White Sulphur Springs next week to talk to a group of people who are interested in starting up a co-op. One of the other things that we do is we spend a lot of our resources in what we call outreach, and we do impact weeks. So some of you may have engaged in some impact weeks that we have done across different regions across the state, and we pull cooperatives together for a week of sort of celebrating cooperatives and telling people about cooperatives. And it's an ongoing, forever exercise in telling people who you are, and that probably is true for every organization, every business, is you're constantly informing people that you're available for, to provide services to them. It's a part of business, the communication side.
You've got to tell your story at the end of the day. Really, if I were to talk to you about RDO Equipment Company and told you that we had a store in Billings and it was big, and there's a lot of equipment there, it's really not that interesting, right? Why do I want to work with you is the question. Given all the competition in the market, I can, in a couple of weeks, buy a John Deere riding lawnmower on Amazon. Why do I want to come into your store? You've got to be passionate. You're selling you, you're selling your organization, and if you don't believe in it, then really look hard in the mirror and decide whether it's the right spot for you or not, because life's too short to not be passionate about the things you do. And I think most of this group, you've heard that from today. If you don't believe in what you're doing, no one else is going to. And then obviously be honest and open and candid about things, but you've got a story to tell, and whatever you decide to do in your life, find that passion and that meaning in it, and people will believe it because it's authentic. It's easy to tell the story and be excited about something that you're excited about. It's a whole different story if you're not.
I think you answered your question by the way you asked the question. You were very enthusiastic about it, and it's just, my dad had a saying that stuck with me. He says, you gotta put on the feed bag every day and just do it. I think it's real simple. If you, much to what you said, if you believe it, it's sincere, it comes across, your leadership gets everybody else involved. It's very infectious in that way.
From a small business perspective, how do we get our message across? What is it that we want? We want to make money. So we're looking for customers. How do you get those customers? Advertising. Where would our customers see this advertising? The farm. Erin does a terrific job on social media. She puts out there stuff that people want to see. our boys in blue coats, animals, babies. That's good stuff. They don't want to hear about Trump this or Democrats that. Everybody said, you ignore that. What is the message you're trying to talk? FFA doesn't talk about these political issues. It talks about making young people better. That's the message you get across. When you go, if you're taking an animal to the fair and you want somebody to come and buy that animal at the fair, you're talking to them, you're shaking their hand, you're looking them in the eye, and you're telling them you're raising an animal, and would you please come and buy that animal from me this summer at the fair? Are you going to come to the, would you like me to call you 2 days before the fair and come? That's, don't overdo it, but, right? You're passionate about it. As business owners, we see you come into the bank, and we see that passion about what you're trying to do. Guess what? We'll probably bid on your animal because we see that passion, we see that honesty, because you know what you're going after. So just look, what's that? Eye on the prize, right?
Okay, we have time for one more question. I think this young lady back here had her hand up.
All right. Thank you for coming up with the questions after we warmed everybody up.
So you guys were talking about how to help being in your organization, but how do we help when we're not in an organization?
Specifically, how to help?
How to help, like, feed the country and how to help areas.
I'm a huge proponent that we take care of each other locally. It's really hard to fix problems in a city, in a state, at the federal level, globally, but we can be really good and effective here. And we can make a difference to the people around us. And that is infectious. If people are spending the time trying to make the world around them a better place, making a difference in their own community, you'll be amazed what happens. And you can move mountains that way. Sometimes if you spend your time really looking at the macro picture every day, it's pretty depressing, to be honest. But you know, I think the story of the beach full of starfish and the little kid picking one up and throwing it back into the water, and the young man with the young lady said, "Well, why we can't do this all day? We can't throw all of these starfish in, so why are we doing it?" And the little girl looked at him and said, "Well, it mattered to that one." And that is the key, really, in life. You're not going to fix everything. It's just not possible, but you can have an impact around you. And so the best advice I could give you would be to start.
I do think that ideas start with one person who shares it with another, and then those two people are passionate about it, and pretty soon you got four. And that really is a lot of times what I see in the cooperative development is that someone will have an idea. Why can't we do this? Why doesn't somebody do this? Why can't we fix this problem? And then collectively they start to work together. And so I think you can be a force of one, but being the entire force of one sometimes is not possible. So you have to gather your forces, gather people around you of like mind to solve the problem that you're looking at.
I think much to what Adam said is that just the smallest thing can turn into the largest. Start small and you never know what you're going to accomplish. And I think it just adds on and adds on with that. Start with your community. What can you do to help on that particular, in that particular community to make that better? And I have another, I try to make every day better than the day before. And if I have that goal, if I go into it that day, if I'm not feeling right about the day, I just start off with, today's going to be one day better than it was yesterday. It's surprising how it moves along and pushes your week and pushes your month and makes everything better.
Absolutely. Identify what it is you're trying to make better. And the only other piece of advice I would give you is that you're doing it because you want it to be better. You're not doing it because you want to have all your classmates say, "Oh, look what I did, look what I'm doing this." That's not what it's about. Making the world a better place is about making it a better place without taking the credit for it. Just do it and make it better and you make every day better, right? You're not looking for people to pat you on the back. You're just trying to make it better. That's it. It really is that simple. But you have to identify them first.
Thank you, guys. That is the end of our panel discussion. We could probably talk for another hour, but we're done. So I'm going to turn it back over to Gwen, and she's going to close us out.
Did you guys like that panel? Yeah. Yeah, wow. That was amazing. Thank you all so much, panelists, and Kelsey for moderating that discussion. I feel like I want to go back through and college and take a bunch of different classes and do a bunch of different stuff in high school and get all these different experiences. And so thank you for all of the wisdom and imparting that on us so that we have an idea as to what we can do in our communities and to prepare for our future careers. So at this point in time, I just want to present you all with tokens of appreciation just as a symbol of our gratitude for you making the time to be here with us today. So can we give them another round of applause, please? With that, that is the end of our panel, so go enjoy the rest of the day. Be sure to hit up the trade show, and good luck with your contests.